The blood-soaked wedding ring arrived in a box with my wife's severed finger. 24 hours later, Victor Castellano sent me the video. I watched my beautiful Eliza scream my real name, Adrian Kane, Delta Force assassin, as he peeled her skin like an orange. She died protecting secrets that could have saved us both. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your location. I thought I'd left the killing behind when I married Eliza 3 years ago. Thought I could bury Adrian Kane, the ghost who'd eliminated 37 targets across 4 continents, and just be normal. Be the construction foreman who came home every night to kiss his wife and plan weekend barbecues. I was wrong. The doorbell rang at 3:47 a.m. I knew because I'd been staring at the ceiling again, fighting the nightmares that never really went away. Eliza stirred beside me, her auburn hair catching moonlight through our bedroom window. "Baby, someone's at the door," she whispered, voice thick with sleep. I grabbed my Glock from the nightstand, old habits die hard, and moved downstairs. Through the peephole, I saw nothing but darkness. But on our welcome mat sat a small brown package with no return address. Inside was Eliza's wedding ring, and her ring finger. I didn't scream. Couldn't scream. Delta Force trains you to compartmentalize, to function when the world collapses. But holding that piece of my wife, seeing her pink nail polish still perfect, something inside me shattered like glass. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. "You recognize the jewelry, soldier boy?" The voice was smooth, educated. East Coast accent with a hint of something foreign underneath. "Who is this?" "Victor Castellano. And I have something that belongs to you." The line went dead. I ran upstairs, taking steps 3 at a time. Our bedroom was empty. Bedsheets still warm. The window was open, a window I knew I'd locked. Professional work. Clean extraction while I was downstairs playing with their little gift. My phone buzzed again. This time, a video message. I shouldn't have watched it. Should have called the FBI, the local police, anyone. But when you love someone the way I loved Eliza, logic disappears. I pressed play. The video quality was crystal clear. Professional cameras, multiple angles. Eliza was tied to a metal chair in what looked like an abandoned warehouse. She was conscious, terrified, but unbroken. That's my girl, never giving them satisfaction. Adrian Kane. Victor's voice came from behind the camera. Former Delta Force. 43 confirmed kills. Specialty, long-range elimination and psychological warfare. Eliza's eyes went wide. She'd never known. 3 years of marriage, and I'd never told her about the monster I used to be. "Your wife's been asking questions, soldier. Digging through your past. Found some interesting files about Operation Nightfall in Sarajevo. Remember that mission?" My blood turned to ice. Sarajevo. 2019. The mission that didn't exist. The one where I put 2 bullets in Dmitry Castellano's skull while he ate dinner with his family. Victor stepped into frame. Tall, silver-haired, wearing an expensive suit like he was attending the opera instead of orchestrating torture. He placed a hand on Eliza's shoulder, and she flinched. "Dmitry was my younger brother. My only family. You took him from me, so now I take from you." He nodded to someone off camera. A man appeared, built like a bodybuilder, holding something that glinted in the harsh warehouse lights. A skinning knife. "No," I whispered to my phone screen. "No, no, no. Your wife discovered your real identity 2 weeks ago." Victor continued conversationally. "Found your old military records hidden in the garage. Smart woman. She came to me directly, offered herself as a trade. Said she'd do anything to protect you from retaliation." Eliza's face crumpled. She'd known. She'd known and tried to save me. She's been quite brave, actually. Haven't said a word about where you might be, what your weaknesses are. Admirable loyalty. The man with the knife moved closer. "But I'm done being patient. What happened next will haunt me until the day I die." The screams. The way Eliza called my name, my real name, as they took pieces of her. The way she looked directly into the camera in those final moments and mouthed, "I love you." The video ended with Victor's face filling the screen. 24 hours, Mr. Kane. Come alone to Pier 47, Warehouse District, or I start sending more pieces. I sat in the darkness of our bedroom, still clutching Eliza's severed finger, and felt something ancient and terrible wake up inside me. Something I'd buried under construction schedules and mortgage payments and dreams of growing old together. Adrian Kane was back, and Victor Castellano had no idea what kind of monster he'd just unleashed. I watched the footage 17 times before my hands stopped shaking. Each replay burned deeper into my memory. Eliza's screams, the methodical way Victor's man worked, the moment her eyes went lifeless. Professional torture. They'd kept her alive for maximum suffering. The timestamp showed it happened 6 hours ago. While I was sleeping peacefully next to empty sheets, my wife was dying in agony because of sins I thought I'd buried. I moved to my home office and pulled up the encrypted files I'd hidden in a false bottom drawer. My Delta Force records. Black Ops missions that officially never happened. Men like me don't get to retire clean. We just pretend the monsters inside us went away. Sarajevo, 2019. Operation Nightfall. The file photos showed Dmitry Castellano, Victor's brother, outside a war crimes tribunal. Intelligence had confirmed he was selling weapons to terrorists, using diplomatic immunity to move freely. My orders were simple: eliminate the target. Collateral damage acceptable. I'd taken the shot during a family dinner. Clean kill, no witnesses. Except I'd missed something crucial. Victor had been in the bathroom. He'd watched his brother's head explode across the dinner table, seen his sister-in-law and nephew covered in blood and brain matter. Now he was returning the favor. My phone buzzed. Another video. This one was different. Timestamp from 2 weeks ago. Security footage from a coffee shop downtown. There was Eliza, sitting across from a man I now recognized as Victor. She looked terrified but determined, sliding a manila folder across the table. The audio was crystal clear. These are copies of everything. Eliza's voice. His real name, military records, deployment history. I found them hidden in our garage. Smart woman. Most wives would have run. I love my husband. Whatever Adrian did before, he's not that person anymore. He's gentle, kind. He coaches Little League on weekends. Victor smiled, cold, predatory. The Adrian Kane I knew put bullets in children. In Sarajevo. My nephew was 8 years old. Eliza's face went white. That can't be true. Your husband is a monster, Mrs. Kane. But monsters can be redirected. Controlled. What do you want? Justice. Eye for an eye. Family for family. Take me instead. The words hit like a punch to the chest. My beautiful, innocent wife had traded herself for my sins. She'd discovered the truth about my past and tried to protect me anyway. How noble. But I'm not interested in substitutes. I want Adrian to suffer the way I did. To watch everything he loves destroyed. He doesn't know I found out. I never told him. Which is why you're perfect bait. The video cut to Victor standing, dropping a business card on the table. You have 48 hours to decide, Mrs. Kane. Come willingly, or I take you anyway. But if you cooperate, make this easy, I promise his death will be quick. Eliza pocketed the card with trembling hands. And if I don't, then I skin you both alive. Very slowly. The footage ended. I sat in the darkness, understanding flooding through me like ice water. Eliza hadn't been randomly taken. She'd walked into Victor's trap voluntarily, thinking she could save me. Had spent 2 weeks agonizing over my past, over the man she'd married, and still chose love over fear. My phone rang. Victor again. Touching video, wasn't it? Your wife's final noble gesture. You son of a bitch. She died believing you were worth saving, Adrian. Died protecting a man who murdered children. Dmitry was selling weapons too, my nephew wasn't. Marcus was 8. Loved soccer. Wanted to be a veterinarian. The words hit like physical blows. In all my years of killing, I'd never asked about collateral damage. Never wanted to know about the children in the next room, the innocent lives shattered by my bullets. 12 hours now, soldier. Pier 47. Come unarmed, come alone, or I start broadcasting your wife's death across the internet. Let the world see what happens to the families of American war criminals. The line went dead. I pulled out my laptop and accessed encrypted military databases I probably shouldn't still have clearance for. Victor Castellano, international arms dealer, but legitimate on paper. Import-export business with offices in 14 countries. Net worth, $340 million. Private security force of former Spetsnaz and SAS operators. This wasn't some street thug looking for revenge. This was a professional who'd spent 3 years planning my destruction. He had resources, connections, military-grade weapons. Going in alone was suicide. But Eliza was already dead, and I had nothing left to lose. I opened my gun safe and began selecting weapons. Glock 19. Combat knife. Flashbang grenades left over from my active duty days. Not nearly enough firepower for what was coming, but it would have to do. As I loaded magazines, I kept seeing Eliza's face in that coffee shop footage. The way she'd looked at Victor's business card like it was a death sentence. She'd known she was walking into hell, and done it anyway. For me. For a monster who'd never deserved her love. Outside our bedroom window, dawn was breaking over a world that no longer made sense. In a few hours, I'd walk into Victor's trap and probably die. But not before I sent every last one of his men to hell first. Some sins can never be forgiven. Some monsters never really change. But some lives love deep enough to die for killers who don't deserve redemption. And some husbands love deep enough to paint the world red with revenge. I drove to Fort Bragg at 4 a.m., using back roads and paying cash for gas. Old paranoia habits that kept soldiers like me breathing. The base was 3 hours away, but I needed resources Victor couldn't track through normal channels. Staff Sergeant Quinn Hayes was pulling night duty at the armory. We'd served 2 tours together in Afghanistan before I went Black Ops. He took one look at my face and knew death was coming for someone. Jesus, Kane. You look like hell warmed over. I need a favor, Quinn. The kind that doesn't exist on any paperwork. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded toward the back office. Talk. I told him about Eliza. About Victor. About the video that would haunt my nightmares forever. Quinn listened without interruption, his face growing darker with each detail. This Castellano bastard has a compound in the warehouse district. I finished. Private army, military-grade security. I'm walking into a meat grinder. Quinn disappeared into the armory's restricted section. 20 minutes later, he returned with a duffel bag that could start a small war. C for plastique. Remote detonators. Thermal scopes. And this, he handed me a modified MP5 submachine gun. Full auto, suppressed, untraceable. Never saw you tonight, brother. Quinn, if this goes sideways, your wife didn't deserve what happened. Make them pay. I drove back toward the city as sunrise painted the sky blood red. Appropriate, considering what was coming. But first, I needed intelligence. Victor's compound would be fortress-level secure, and walking in blind was suicide even with Quinn's arsenal. I needed someone on the inside. The Moonlight Lounge sat in the heart of downtown's financial district. Upscale strip club that catered to politicians and businessmen with expensive secrets. I'd been there once before, 5 years ago, tracking a Syrian arms dealer who liked American dancers. The club's owner, Felix Rossi, had ties to half the criminal underworld on the East Coast. More importantly, he owed me a favor from that Syrian job. Time to collect. I found Felix in his office above the main floor, counting stacks of $100 bills, while security footage played on multiple monitors. He looked up when I entered, no surprise on his face. Felix survived in his business by expecting trouble before it arrived. Adrian fucking Kane. Thought you were dead or retired. Both, until yesterday. I laid out Victor's operation, watching Felix's expression shift from casual interest to genuine concern. The Castellano name carried weight in criminal circles, the kind of weight that crushed smaller players who got in the way. Victor's been consolidating territory for months, Felix said. Bought out 3 rival families, absorbed their operations. Word is he's planning something big, something that requires serious muscle. What kind of muscle? The kind that speaks Russian and knows how to disappear bodies. Felix pulled out a tablet, scrolling through surveillance photos. Recognize any of these faces? I studied the images. Former Spetsnaz operators, based on their build and bearing. Professional killers who'd worked the bloodiest conflicts of the past decade. Victor wasn't just running a revenge operation. He was building an army. There's more, Felix continued. 3 weeks ago, Victor met with a federal agent. FBI, but not official business. My sources say money changed hands. Lot of money. A federal connection. That complicated things exponentially. If Victor had law enforcement protection, going after him would trigger a manhunt with my face on every wanted poster from here to Mexico. I need layout details on his compound. Guard rotations, security systems, weak points. Felix's smile was cold as winter. That information's gonna cost you. Name your price. Victor's been muscling into my territory, taking my girls, intimidating my customers. You kill that son of a bitch, and we're even. I studied the surveillance photos again, memorizing faces and positions. 12 men minimum, all armed with military-grade weapons. Thermal cameras, motion sensors, reinforced entry points. A fortress designed to keep armies out, not lone wolves in. But I wasn't just any lone wolf. I was Delta Force trained, with 3 years of rage building inside me like a pressure cooker. And now I had the tools to turn that rage into systematic destruction. One more thing, Felix said as I prepared to leave. Victor's got a weakness. His sister-in-law and nephew, the ones who survived Sarajevo. They're here in the city, under his protection. I don't kill innocents. No, but he thinks you do. Might be useful leverage. I walked out of the Moonlight Lounge with more questions than answers. Victor wasn't just seeking revenge. He was building something bigger. A criminal empire with federal protection and military-grade security. And somewhere in the middle of it all, the ghost of an 8-year-old boy I'd killed without knowing his name. The clock on my dashboard read 9:47 a.m. Less than 8 hours until Victor's deadline. Time enough for reconnaissance, equipment preparation, and one final goodbye to the man I used to be. I drove past our house one last time, seeing Eliza's garden through the chain-link fence. She'd planted roses last spring, talking excitedly about how beautiful they'd be when we grew old together. Now they'd bloom over her memory, while I descended back into the darkness I'd spent 3 years trying to escape. Some men get to be husbands. Some get to be killers. But few get to be both, and fewer still survive the transition back. Victor Castellano was about to learn which version of Adrian Kane was coming for him. I spent the afternoon transforming myself back into someone I'd sworn never to be again. Hair dyed black, beard trimmed to military precision, contact lenses to change my eye color from green to brown. In the mirror, Adrian Kane the construction foreman disappeared, replaced by a ghost the government had spent millions training to kill. The warehouse district sprawled along the riverfront like a concrete cancer. Abandoned factories mixed with legitimate businesses, creating perfect cover for illegal operations. Victor's compound sat at the heart of it, a converted shipping facility surrounded by 20-foot walls topped with razor wire. I positioned myself on a rooftop 4 blocks away, using thermal scopes to map the security perimeter. 18 guards visible, rotating in precise military patterns. Sniper nests on 3 corners. Armored vehicles parked at strategic choke points. This wasn't a criminal hideout. It was a military installation. But every fortress has weaknesses if you know where to look. The shipping facility still received legitimate cargo twice weekly. Food service trucks, laundry delivery, waste management. All potential entry vectors if you were patient enough to wait for the right opportunity. I was watching a garbage truck rumble through the main gate when my phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. Rooftop. Northwest corner. Come alone. Someone had been watching me watch them. I found her waiting beside an air conditioning unit, mid-30s, athletic build, wearing tactical gear that screamed federal agent. She had intelligent eyes and the kind of confidence that comes from years of dealing with dangerous men. Special Agent Morgan Hale, FBI, she said, flashing credentials. We need to talk. Unless you're here to arrest Victor Castellano for murder, we have nothing to discuss. Victor's operation goes deeper than personal revenge, Mr. Kane. He's been trafficking weapons to terrorist cells across 3 countries. The Bureau's been building a case for 18 months. I studied her face, looking for tells. FBI agents didn't usually conduct solo meetings on rooftops with wanted men. What's your real angle here, Morgan? Victor's federal contact is my partner. Agent Preston Marsh has been feeding him intelligence, warning him about raids, protecting his operations in exchange for offshore accounts worth $12 million. A dirty federal agent explained how Victor operated so freely, but it didn't explain why Morgan was telling me instead of internal affairs. Preston killed my informant 3 weeks ago, she continued. Made it look like a drug deal gone wrong. IA won't touch him without concrete evidence, and Victor's too careful to leave digital trails. So you want me to do your dirty work? I want Victor Castellano's empire destroyed. You want revenge for your wife. Our goals align. She handed me a tablet loaded with architectural blueprints, guard schedules, and security protocols. Information that would have taken me weeks to gather independently. There's a weakness in their perimeter. Morgan pointed to a section of the compound's eastern wall. Blind spot in the camera coverage. Shift change at 11 p.m. creates a 90-second window. But once you're inside, you're on your own. Why help me? You could bring down Victor through official channels eventually. Morgan's expression hardened. Because eventually isn't good enough when terrorists are getting American weapons. And because what they did to your wife. She shook her head. No one deserves that. I studied the blueprints, memorizing entry points and defensive positions. The compound was larger than I'd estimated. Multiple buildings connected by underground tunnels, with a central command center where Victor likely conducted business. One more thing, Morgan said. Victor's expecting you to come straight through the front gate, guns blazing. He's prepared for a suicide attack, not tactical infiltration. How do you know what he's expecting? Because Preston's been advising him on your psychological profile. They think grief and rage will make you reckless. They were wrong. Grief had made me focused. Rage had made me patient. And love for a dead wife had made me willing to do whatever was necessary to balance the scales. I climbed down from the rooftop as darkness settled over the warehouse district. 10:47 p.m. 13 minutes until the shift change Morgan had identified. Time to see if 3 years of civilian life had dulled the edge that once made me the military's most efficient killer. The eastern wall stood exactly as the blueprints indicated. Concrete barrier with a service ladder leading to a maintenance walkway. 2 guards passed beneath every 15 minutes, but thermal imaging showed a gap in their patrol route. At exactly 11 p.m., I scaled the wall. The compound's interior was a maze of shipping containers and industrial equipment. Perfect cover for someone who knew how to move unseen. I made my way toward the main building, avoiding security cameras and motion sensors with muscle memory that came flooding back like riding a bicycle. Through a ground floor window, I glimpsed Victor's operations center. Banks of computer monitors, communications equipment, and a conference table where 3 men in expensive suits discussed something involving maps of the Middle East. Arms dealing on an international scale, just as Morgan had claimed. But Victor wasn't among them. I moved deeper into the compound, following blueprints burned into my memory. The central building had 3 floors, administrative offices on the ground level, living quarters on the second, and Victor's private penthouse on the third. That's where I'd find the man who'd murdered my wife. The stairwell was unguarded but monitored by cameras. I disabled each one with suppressed shots from Quinn's modified pistol, creating blind spots that wouldn't be noticed until the next security sweep. Outside Victor's penthouse door, I paused to listen. Classical music drifted through the walls, something orchestral and dramatic. The soundtrack to my wife's killer enjoying his evening. I picked the lock with tools that hadn't seen use in 3 years, muscle memory guiding fingers that once opened doors across 4 continents. The penthouse beyond was elegantly furnished. Artwork, Persian rugs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. And sitting in a leather chair with his back to me, reading a newspaper like he didn't have a care in the world, was Victor Castellano. "Right on time, Mr. Kane," he said without turning around. Though I must admit, the infiltration approach shows more creativity than I expected. I raised my weapon, finger on the trigger, ready to end this nightmare once and for all. That's when I heard Eliza's voice coming from the speakers hidden around the room. "Adrian? Adrian, if you can hear this, don't trust anyone. The FBI agent, Morgan, she's working with them. It's all a trap." My blood turned to ice as my dead wife's voice filled the room. Victor slowly turned his chair to face me, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "Impressive quality, isn't it? We recorded that little message during one of our sessions with your wife. She's dead. I watched you kill her. You watched me kill someone who looked like her. Amazing what good makeup and the right camera angles can accomplish." He gestured to the speakers. "Eliza's been very helpful in planning your downfall." The recording continued playing. Eliza's voice, strained with pain but unmistakably alive. "They have someone inside the FBI feeding them information. Agent Morgan Hale isn't who she claims to be. She's been working with Victor for months." My weapon remained trained on Victor's chest, but doubt crept into my mind like poison. The woman on the rooftop had known too much, appeared too conveniently. And the blueprints she'd provided had led me straight into this room. Where is she? Safe. For now. Victor poured himself a glass of whiskey, movements deliberately casual. "Your wife's survival depends entirely on your cooperation. What do you want?" "Simple. You're going to eliminate someone for me. Just like the old days." He slid a photograph across the coffee table. FBI agent Preston Marsh, the corrupt federal contact Morgan had mentioned. The man was leaving a restaurant, unaware he was being surveilled. Preston's becoming a liability. Too greedy, too sloppy. Last week he tried to blackmail me for additional payments. Victor sipped his whiskey. "I need him removed quietly. Make it look like a robbery gone wrong." "And if I refuse?" Victor pressed a button on his phone. A new video appeared on the wall-mounted television. Eliza, very much alive, tied to a chair in a different location. She looked exhausted, terrified, but unharmed. Then I start taking pieces of her. Slowly. And this time, there won't be any makeup tricks. I studied the photograph of Preston Marsh. The man's routine, his security detail, potential vulnerabilities. My tactical mind automatically began planning the assassination even as my conscience recoiled. 24 hours, Victor said. "Bring me proof of Preston's death, and you get another piece of your wife back. Refuse, and..." He shrugged. "How do I know you won't kill her anyway?" "Because I'm not done with you yet. Preston is just the beginning. There are others who need eliminating. Competitors, witnesses, loose ends. You're going to help me clean house." The door behind me opened. 3 armed men entered, weapons trained on my position. I could take them, but not without alerting the entire compound. And if Eliza was really alive somewhere else? "Your choice, soldier. Be my weapon, or watch your wife die by inches." I lowered my gun. "If I do this, I want proof she's alive. Recent proof." Victor smiled and made another call. Within seconds, my phone buzzed with a video message. Eliza, holding today's newspaper, speaking directly to the camera. "Adrian, I know you're watching this. Whatever they're making you do, I understand. Just stay alive. Find a way." The timestamp showed the video was recorded 3 hours ago. "Satisfied?" Victor asked. I nodded, hating myself for what I was about to become again. 2 hours later, I sat in a stolen car outside Preston Marsh's Georgetown apartment. The FBI agent lived alone in a secure building, but federal protection meant nothing against someone with my training. The building's service entrance was monitored but not actively guarded. I entered through the parking garage, took the service elevator to the 8th floor, and picked the lock on Preston's door with surgical precision. He was inside, sitting at his computer, transferring funds to an offshore account. 43 years old, overweight, soft from years behind a desk. He didn't hear me enter. Agent Marsh. He spun around, reaching for a service weapon that wasn't there. When he saw my face, recognition dawned immediately. Adrian Kane. Victor said you might come calling. He also said you've been skimming money. Preston's laugh was bitter. 12 million in payments over 18 months, and I kept maybe 2% for myself. Victor's paranoid. Tell me about Morgan Hale. Morgan. Preston looked genuinely confused. She's been investigating Victor for months. Internal Affairs is building a case against me because of her reports. The pieces clicked into place like a weapon being assembled. Morgan wasn't Victor's partner. She was exactly who she claimed to be. But Victor had known she'd approach me, had prepared for that possibility. Victor played us both, I said. Probably. He's 3 steps ahead of everyone. I studied Preston's face, looking for deception. The man was corrupt, had taken blood money, and protected a murderer's operation. But he was also a pawn in a larger game, just like me. There's a way out of this, I said finally. For both of us. Preston leaned forward, desperate hope in his eyes. What kind of way out? I explained my plan quickly. Preston would fake his own death, disappear into witness protection in exchange for testimony against Victor's entire operation. It would require Morgan's help and perfect timing, but it could work. And Victor gets what he deserves. 30 minutes later, Preston Marsh officially died in a home invasion robbery. I used his own service weapon, fired into a pillow to muffle the sound, then scattered the apartment to look like a burglary. The body in the bedroom was Preston himself, wearing a bulletproof vest under his shirt and enough theatrical blood to fool a quick examination. I photographed the corpse and sent the image to Victor. His response came immediately. Well done. Phase 2 begins tomorrow. But Victor had made one critical mistake. He'd assumed grief and desperation would make me his obedient weapon. Instead, they'd reminded me why I'd become Adrian Kane in the first place. Some battles can't be won through direct assault. Sometimes you have to become the monster your enemies expect, gain their trust, then destroy them from within. Eliza was alive. Victor thought he controlled me. And somewhere in the city, Morgan Hale was building a case that would bring down a criminal empire. Time to show Victor Castellano what happened when you turned a Delta Force operator into your personal assassin. Victor's second assignment arrived at dawn. A manila envelope slipped under my hotel room door contained 3 photographs and a detailed dossier. Judge Eleanor Whitman, Federal Court, Eastern District. She'd been blocking Victor's attempts to get weapons trafficking charges dismissed through legal technicalities. The file included her daily routine, security details, family information. Her 16-year-old daughter attended private school. Her husband worked as a cardiologist. Normal people living normal lives, unaware they'd become targets in a war they never signed up for. But there was something else in the envelope. A handwritten note. Parking garage. Level B3. 1 hour. Come alone. M. Morgan had found me. The parking garage beneath the federal building was nearly empty at 7 a.m. I found Morgan waiting beside a black sedan, her expression grim. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Preston's alive, she said without preamble. Safe house in Virginia. He's agreed to testify in exchange for witness protection. Victor thinks he's dead. That buys us time. Not much time. Judge Whitman is Victor's next target, isn't she? I handed her the dossier. Morgan flipped through it, her face growing darker with each page. Eliminating a federal judge will bring down the full weight of federal law enforcement. Victor's either desperate or planning something massive. Both, I said. His arms dealing operation is about to be exposed. He's cleaning house before running. Morgan pulled out her own tablet, showing me surveillance footage from the warehouse district. Trucks loading shipping containers, workers dismantling equipment, files being burned in industrial drums. Victor's liquidating his entire operation. My sources say he's got a cargo ship waiting at Norfolk Harbor, registration traced to a shell company in Montenegro. He's running to Europe. Not just running, starting over. Those weapons shipments we've been tracking? They're not going to terrorists anymore. They're going to legitimate buyers, foreign governments, private military contractors. Victor's going corporate. The pieces clicked together. Victor wasn't just seeking revenge against me. He was using me to eliminate obstacles while he transformed his criminal enterprise into a legitimate international business. Judge Whitman represented legal roadblocks. Preston had been a financial liability. There's more, Morgan continued. Victor's sister-in-law and nephew, the survivors from Sarajevo, they're not under his protection. They're prisoners. Insurance policy to keep you compliant. She showed me thermal imaging from another warehouse across town. 2 heat signatures in what appeared to be a fortified safe room. A woman and child, guarded around the clock. Maya and Marcus Castellano. They've been held captive for 3 years, ever since Victor started planning this revenge operation. My stomach turned. The 8-year-old boy I'd supposedly killed in Sarajevo was still alive, living in terror as his uncle used him for leverage against the man who'd murdered his father. Victor's been playing a longer game than either of us realized, I said, which is why we need to end this. Tonight. Morgan outlined her plan. Federal raids on all of Victor's properties simultaneously, the warehouse compound, the shipping facility, the safe house holding his family. Coordinated strike that would prevent him from escaping or harming hostages. What about Eliza? We find her during the raid. Victor's keeping her close, probably in the main compound. I studied Morgan's tactical plans, identifying potential problems. Victor has 18 armed guards, military-grade weapons, and advanced warning systems. A frontal assault will turn into a bloodbath, unless someone disables the security from inside. She was asking me to go back, to continue playing Victor's assassin until the moment federal agents breached his compound, to risk Eliza's life on the assumption that law enforcement could execute a perfect raid. There's another problem, I said. Victor's federal contact isn't just Preston. He's got someone higher up the chain feeding him information. Morgan's expression hardened. How do you know? Because he knew you'd approach me. Prepared for that possibility. Someone with access to FBI operational plans warned him. That's impossible. This operation is classified above my clearance level. Then you've got a leak at the deputy director level or higher. Morgan was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. If Victor had protection at the highest levels of federal law enforcement, any official operation would be compromised before it began. We do this unofficially, she said finally. No backup, no federal resources. Just us. 2 people against a private army. 2 people with nothing left to lose. She was right. Victor had taken everything from both of us, my wife, her partner, our faith in the system we'd served. Official channels had failed. Legal remedies were blocked by corruption. Sometimes justice required stepping outside the law. I go back to Victor, accept the judge assassination, I said. But instead of killing her, I get her to safety and use the chaos to locate Eliza, while I coordinate the family rescue and gather evidence for prosecution. What if Victor realizes it's a trap? Morgan's smile was cold as winter. Then we improvise. We spent the next hour planning contingencies, communication protocols, extraction routes. 2 federal agents preparing to commit acts that would end their careers and possibly their lives. As I prepared to leave, Morgan grabbed my arm. Your wife. When we find her, she may not be the same person you remember. 3 days of psychological torture changes people. She's alive. That's all that matters. And the boy? Marcus? What happens when you see the child you thought you'd killed? I didn't have an answer for that. How do you apologize to an 8-year-old for murdering his father? How do you explain that sometimes good men do terrible things in service of larger causes? Some sins don't have solutions. Some wounds never heal. But some debts can only be paid in blood. Victor Castellano was about to learn that turning a Delta Force operator into your personal weapon comes with risks he'd never calculated. By tonight, this war would be over, one way or another. I returned to Victor's compound at sunset, carrying Judge Whitman's fabricated death certificate and crime scene photos Morgan had doctored. The security checkpoint waved me through without question. I was becoming a trusted asset in Victor's eyes. Victor waited in his penthouse office, examining shipping manifests while classical music played softly in the background. He looked up when I entered, eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Excellent work, Adrian. Judge Whitman's death will be ruled a carjacking gone wrong. Very clean. I placed the evidence on his desk. She won't be blocking any more of your legal maneuvers. Indeed. Which brings us to Phase 3. Victor opened a new file, revealing photographs of 3 men in military uniforms. These are the witnesses from your Sarajevo operation. The soldiers who can testify that Adrian Kane existed, that the military's most efficient killer isn't actually dead. My blood chilled. The 3 Delta Force operators who'd provided overwatch during the Dmitry Castellano assassination. If they testified publicly, my new identity would evaporate, leaving me exposed to international prosecution for war crimes. They're all stationed at different bases now, Victor continued. Fort Campbell, Quantico, Norfolk. Eliminating them simultaneously will require precise coordination. That's a lot of federal installations to breach. Which is why I'm giving you resources. Victor gestured to a tactical display showing base layouts, guard rotations, security protocols. My federal contact has provided everything you need. I studied the plans, mind racing. 3 military bases meant 3 separate operations, each requiring days of preparation. Victor was buying himself time while I eliminated threats to both our operations. There's something else, Victor said, pressing a button on his desk. A wall panel slid aside, revealing a holding cell. Eliza sat on a narrow cot, looking thinner than I remembered, but alive and unbroken. When she saw me, her eyes widened with a mixture of relief and horror. Adrian. Hello, darling, Victor said mockingly. Your husband's been working very hard to earn your freedom. Eliza stared at me through the reinforced glass. What is he making you do? I wanted to tell her everything, about the fake deaths, about Morgan's plan, about the rescue operation planned for tonight. Instead, I maintained the cold expression Victor expected from his personal assassin. What's necessary? Victor smiled. Phase 3 begins tomorrow. Complete all 3 eliminations within 72 hours, and your wife goes free. Fail and he left the threat unfinished. As Victor walked me toward the elevator, I memorized every detail of Eliza's prison. Reinforced walls, electronic locks, ventilation system access points. Information Morgan would need for the extraction. But something felt wrong. The setup was too clean, too convenient. Victor showing me Eliza's location, providing detailed base infiltration plans, trusting me with increasingly sensitive operations. The elevator doors opened, revealing 6 armed men waiting inside. Going down, Mr. Kane? Victor's voice had lost all pretense of friendliness. I reached for my concealed weapon, but found empty holster. They disarmed me during the security scan without my noticing, professional work by professionals who knew my reputation. The elevator descended to a sub-basement I hadn't known existed. When the doors opened, I found myself in an interrogation facility that belonged in a military black site. Concrete walls, drainage systems, restraint equipment designed for systematic torture. You didn't really think I'd trust you completely, did you? Victor asked as his men forced me into a metal chair. Adrian Kane, the legendary Delta Force assassin, suddenly developing a conscience? Highly unlikely. Steel restraints locked around my wrists and ankles. Professional grade. designed to hold much stronger men than me. I've been monitoring your communications, Victor continued. Your meeting with Agent Morgan Hale this morning was quite enlightening. My stomach dropped. If Victor knew about Morgan, knew about our plan. Relax. Agent Hale is quite safe. In fact, she's been working for me from the beginning. The door opened and Morgan walked in, no longer wearing FBI credentials. Instead, she carried a briefcase and wore the expression of someone who'd just won a complex game. Hello, Adrian. Sorry about the deception, but Victor needed someone you'd trust completely. You son of a bitch. Victor laughed. Agent Morgan Hale does work for the FBI, but she also works for me. Has been for 18 months, feeding me information about federal investigations while building an airtight case against my competitors. Morgan opened her briefcase, revealing surveillance equipment, forged documents, and detailed psychological profiles. The grieving widower, desperate to save his wife. Textbook manipulation psychology. Preston really is alive, really is in witness protection, Morgan confirmed. But his testimony will focus on my competitors' operations, not Victor's. By the time federal prosecutors realize they've been fed misinformation, Victor will be operating legitimately from Montenegro. The pieces fell into place like a house of cards collapsing. Every move I'd made, every plan I'd developed, had been anticipated and countered. Victor hadn't just been playing chess. He'd been playing chess while I thought we were playing checkers. Eliza? Very much alive, very much in love with her husband, the construction foreman, Victor said. But she has no idea her beloved Adrian used to murder children for the U.S. government. A new video appeared on wall-mounted monitors. Eliza in her cell, but the timestamp showed it was recorded weeks ago. She was reading a letter, tears streaming down her face. We told her you'd abandoned her, Morgan explained. Left her to die while you disappeared with a new identity. She spent the past month believing you chose your own survival over her life. Victor moved closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. When she sees you again, when she learns what you really are, what you've done in service of revenge she never asked for, what do you think that knowledge will do to her? I tested the restraints, but they were secure. Military-grade hardware designed to hold prisoners during enhanced interrogation. Even if I could break free, 6 armed guards stood between me and any exit. What do you want? Simple. You're going to help me disappear. Completely. Adrian Kane will be blamed for an international terrorism conspiracy. The construction foreman identity will be exposed as fraudulent. And I'll vanish into legitimate business, while federal prosecutors spend years chasing a ghost. And Eliza? Victor's smile was genuinely warm. Gets to live with the knowledge that her husband was a monster who destroyed everything she believed about their life together. Some revenge isn't about killing your enemy. Sometimes it's about destroying everything they love while leaving them alive to suffer the consequences. Victor Castellano had just shown me what perfect revenge actually looked like. The interrogation room door burst open with explosive force. 3 men in tactical gear stormed inside, weapons raised. Moving with military precision, I recognized immediately. Federal agents. Everyone on the ground. But these weren't FBI. The lead operative wore no identification, carried weapons that weren't standard federal issue, and moved with the fluid efficiency of Special Operations Forces. Victor's guards reached for their weapons, but never got the chance. Suppressed gunfire dropped them in seconds, clean headshots that spoke of professional training and zero hesitation about killing. Adrian Kane, the lead operative said, removing his helmet to reveal the weathered face of Colonel Grant Morrison, my former commanding officer. Been a long time, soldier. Grant, the man who'd recruited me into Delta Force, who'd given me my deadliest assignments, who'd supposedly died in a training accident 2 years ago. You're dead, I said. Officially, yes. Practically, I've been running off-books operations for defense contractors who need problems solved quietly. Grant moved to my restraints, producing electronic lock picks. Problems like arms dealers who threaten American interests. Victor backed against the wall, his confident demeanor evaporating. This wasn't part of our arrangement. Arrangements change, Grant replied, freeing my wrists. Especially when the merchandise proves defective. Morgan raised her weapon, aiming at Grant's head. You're not authorized to be here. Authorization comes from people who don't officially exist, Agent Hale. People who've been watching Victor's operation for months, waiting for the right moment to acquire his client lists and shipping routes. The truth hit like a physical blow. This wasn't about justice or revenge. It was about one criminal organization eliminating another to absorb their assets. You used me, I said to Grant. Fed Victor information about my location, my identity, my wife. Victor needed motivation to draw you out of retirement. Eliza provided that motivation. Where is she? Grant checked his watch. Safe. For now. But her continued safety depends on your cooperation with the final phase of this operation. He handed me a tablet showing surveillance footage from multiple locations. Victor's shipping containers being loaded onto military transport trucks. His financial accounts being drained by electronic transfers. His weapons inventory being cataloged by personnel in unmarked uniforms. Victor's entire operation is being absorbed into a legitimate defense contracting company. His client lists, his shipping routes, his international contacts, all of it becomes property of Blackwater Solutions. Blackwater was dissolved years ago. Under that name, yes. But private military contractors never really disappear. They just rebrand and find new government sponsors. Victor found his voice. You can't do this. I have federal protection, congressional oversight, had federal protection. Morgan corrected, lowering her weapon. Agent Preston Marsh's testimony exposed your entire network. Every federal contact you corrupted is now under investigation. The game within the game was finally becoming clear. Victor had been played by professionals who made his manipulation look amateur. The U.S. government had allowed him to build his arms-dealing empire specifically to steal it at the moment of maximum value. What about the boy? I asked. Marcus Castellano? Grant's expression hardened. What boy? I described the thermal imaging Morgan had shown me. The woman and child held captive in Victor's safe house. Grant pulled out his phone, speaking in rapid military shorthand to unseen operatives. Sir, one of his men reported through earpiece communication audible to the room. Safe house is empty. No signs of recent occupation. Morgan smiled coldly. There is no boy, Adrian. Marcus Castellano died in Sarajevo exactly as reported. The thermal signatures I showed you were fabricated. My world tilted on its axis. Then who? Nobody. The 8-year-old you've been torturing yourself about for 3 years died with his father. Your conscience has been eating you alive over a ghost. Victor laughed bitterly. Even in defeat, the truth serves my revenge. Tell him the rest, Colonel. Tell him about his wife. Grant's jaw tightened. Eliza discovered your real identity through classified files that were deliberately leaked to your home computer. Files I planted to initiate this entire operation. You wanted her to find out. We needed Victor to have leverage over you. Eliza's discovery and subsequent capture provided that leverage while giving us access to Victor's security protocols through your infiltration. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Everyone I trusted had been working for someone else. Every move I'd made had been anticipated, planned, manipulated by people who treated human lives like chess pieces. Where is my wife? Upstairs. Waiting for you. Grant handed me a keycard. But before you reunite with her, understand this. Eliza knows everything now. About Sarajevo, about the children you killed, about the monster you used to be. She's seen the classified files, the mission reports, the body counts. And she asked to speak with you one final time before she enters witness protection with a new identity. My heart stopped. Witness protection? Eliza Kane, the construction foreman's wife, has to die for Adrian Kane, the war criminal, to face justice. She gets to start over, Clean slate, new name. But she can never see you again. Victor's revenge was complete. He'd torn apart everything I loved while federal operatives stole his empire and destroyed both our lives in service of larger geopolitical games. But none of that mattered if Eliza was alive. I took the keycard and headed for the elevator, leaving behind a room full of people who'd manipulated every moment of the past week for their own purposes. Time to face the woman I'd married under false pretenses and learn whether love could survive the complete destruction of trust. Some lies are told to protect the people we love. Some truths are revealed to destroy them. I was about to discover which category my marriage fell into. The elevator climbed to Victor's penthouse in deadly silence. Each floor that passed felt like a countdown to the end of everything I'd built with Eliza. The keycard trembled in my hands as the doors opened. She stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, silhouetted against the city lights. 3 years of marriage, and I'd never seen her look so small, so fragile. File folders lay scattered across Victor's desk, classified documents bearing my real name, mission reports, photographs I'd hoped she'd never see. Hello, Adrian. Not baby or honey, like she'd called me for 3 years. Adrian. My real name spoken like a curse. Eliza. She turned slowly, and I saw the devastation in her eyes. Not just fear or anger, but complete betrayal. The look of someone whose entire world had been revealed as an elaborate lie. 43 confirmed kills, she said quietly, reading from one of the files. Including women and children classified as acceptable collateral damage. You don't understand the context. I understand that I've been sleeping next to a stranger for 3 years. Cooking dinner for a man who executes people for a living. Planning a family with someone whose hands are covered in blood. I moved closer, but she stepped back, maintaining distance between us like I was radioactive. Everything was real, Eliza. My love for you. Our marriage, the life we built on lies. Her voice broke. You let me fall in love with a construction foreman named Adrian who coached Little League and wanted children. That man doesn't exist. He does exist. He's who I became because of you. Eliza picked up a photograph from the desk, surveillance footage of me in tactical gear, taken during a mission in Syria. The man in that photo looked nothing like the husband who'd kissed her goodbye every morning. They showed me videos, Adrian. Footage of some of your operations. I watched you kill a man's entire family while they ate dinner. Sarajevo. Dmitry Castellano's final meal with his wife and son. The mission that had started this nightmare. That was different. He was selling weapons to terrorists. His son was 8 years old. The words hit like physical blows. For 3 years, I'd tortured myself believing I'd killed Marcus Castellano. Now I knew the truth. The boy had died, but not by my hand. Victor had killed his own nephew to complete his revenge fantasy. The child died because Victor needed him dead to blame me for it. I never shot that boy. Eliza stared at me with hollow eyes. Does it matter? You were there to kill his father. You brought death into that family's home. She was right. I'd been the catalyst for everything that followed. My actions had created Victor's thirst for revenge, had set in motion the events that destroyed 2 families across 3 years. Colonel Grant is offering me witness protection, Eliza continued. New identity, new life, somewhere you can never find me. And you're taking it. What choice do I have? Stay married to a war criminal who's lied to me about everything? Try to have children with a man who's killed other people's children? I wanted to argue, to explain the complexities of military operations, the impossible choices soldiers face in war zones. But looking at her face, I realized she was right. Some sins are too large for forgiveness. Some lies too fundamental for trust to survive. I need you to know, I said finally, that every day of our marriage was the happiest of my life. You made me into a better man. You made yourself into a lie. Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Grant and his operatives, ready to escort Eliza into her new life. Our time was almost over. There's something else, Eliza said, pulling an envelope from her jacket. Something I need you to know before I disappear forever. Inside was a medical report dated 3 weeks ago. Pregnancy test results. Positive. My world stopped spinning. Your was the stress of the past week, the fear, the torture. I lost it yesterday. The final piece of Victor's revenge. Not just destroying my marriage, but ensuring our potential family died before it could begin. He'd taken everything. My wife, my future, even children who would never be born. I'm sorry, I whispered. So am I. Grant appeared in the doorway with 2 agents. Time to go, Mrs. Kane. Eliza moved toward them, but stopped beside me. For a moment, I thought she might kiss my cheek, might offer some gesture of closure. Instead, she removed her wedding ring and placed it on the desk beside the classified files. Goodbye, Adrian. I hope someday you find peace with what you've done. They escorted her toward the elevator. I wanted to call after her, to beg her to reconsider, to promise I could change. But what promises could a killer make that would mean anything to a woman who'd lost everything because of his past? The elevator doors closed, taking away the only person who'd ever made me want to be someone different. I stood alone in Victor's penthouse, surrounded by the evidence of my crimes, holding the wedding ring of a woman who'd loved a man who never really existed. Outside the windows, the city sparkled with millions of lights, lives being lived by people who'd never killed, never destroyed families, never watched their own families disintegrate because of sins they'd tried to bury. Grant returned alone 30 minutes later. She's safe. New identity, new location. You'll never see her again. And Victor, being transferred to a black site facility. His knowledge of international arms networks makes him too valuable to prosecute publicly. What about me? Grant smiled coldly. Adrian Kane dies tonight. Officially. Car accident on the highway, body burned beyond recognition. Clean slate. And unofficially, you continue working for Blackwater Solutions under whatever name you choose. Your skills are too valuable to waste on conscience and regret. Some stories don't have happy endings. Some men don't get redemption. Some marriages don't survive the weight of truth. But some wars never really end. They just find new battlefields and new soldiers willing to fight them. I looked at Eliza's wedding ring one final time, then slipped it into my pocket. Time to become someone new. Again. 5 years later, I stood in a cemetery in Virginia, watching from a distance as Eliza placed flowers on a small gravestone. She wore a simple dress, her hair longer now, a wedding ring on her finger that wasn't mine. Beside her stood a man in his 30s, holding the hand of a little girl who couldn't have been more than 3 years old. My wife had found the family I could never give her. The gravestone read, Adrian Kane, loving husband, taken too soon. The official record of my death, complete with fake burial plot. Even in death, I was living a lie. I'd spent 5 years working black operations for Blackwater Solutions under the name Marcus Webb. Eliminated 17 targets across 4 continents. Each mission a step further away from the man who'd once coached Little League and dreamed of backyard barbecues. Victor Castellano had died in federal custody 6 months after his capture. Officially from a heart attack, unofficially from a syringe full of potassium chloride administered by guards who found his knowledge inconvenient. Even in a maximum security facility, some debts get collected. Grant Morrison had been promoted to Director of International Operations. Morgan Hale had received a federal commendation for her work infiltrating Victor's organization. Everyone had moved on with their lives except me. But today was different. Today, I was ending Marcus Webb's career and Adrian Kane's story forever. The envelope in my jacket contained evidence of every black operation I'd conducted for the past 5 years. Names, dates, targets, government authorizations that officially didn't exist. Insurance against the people who destroyed my life while building their careers on the wreckage. I'd already sent copies to investigative journalists in 3 countries, along with detailed testimony about Victor's murder and the conspiracy that had orchestrated everything. By tomorrow morning, Grant's shadow empire would be front-page news across the globe. Some revenge takes years to plan. Some justice comes from unexpected directions. Eliza gathered her family and walked toward their car. Her new husband, David, according to my research, was a pediatrician who'd never held a weapon in his life. Their daughter had Eliza's eyes and an innocence no child of mine could ever have possessed. She was happy, safe, free from the monster she'd married without knowing it. That was enough. I walked away from the cemetery and toward the life I'd chosen. One final mission that would expose the darkness I'd served while ensuring the woman I'd loved could continue living in the light. Some stories end with justice. Some end with redemption. Some end with the understanding that love sometimes means letting go of everything you want for the sake of everything they need. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Package delivered. Story goes live in 6 hours. Welcome to civilian life, Adrian. The journalist I'd contacted in London. By midnight, Grant's empire would collapse under the weight of public scrutiny. Victor's revenge would finally be complete, but not in the way he'd planned. I dropped the phone in a trash can and walked toward the train station. A new name waited in my wallet, Thomas Gray, retired insurance investigator. A quiet life in a small town where no one asked questions about the past. Behind me, car doors slammed as Eliza's family drove away toward their Sunday dinner and homework help and bedtime stories. Normal life. Safe life. Everything I'd wanted and everything I could never have. But love isn't always about possession. Sometimes it's about protection. Sometimes the greatest act of love is disappearing so completely that the people you care about never have to look over their shoulders again. Thomas Gray would never kill anyone, never manipulate anyone, never destroy families in service of abstract political goals. Thomas Gray would be the man Adrian Kane should have been from the beginning. The end word count. 614. Did this story give you chills? Did you feel the weight of Adrian's impossible choices and Eliza's heartbreak?